The morning rush had ended, and the little diner on the corner of Maple Street grew quiet. The smell of coffee lingered in the air, blending with the soft hum of the ceiling fan above. Lena, a young waitress in her early 20s, wiped down the last table and glanced at the clock. It wasn't even noon yet, but her feet already ached. She had been working double shifts all week, trying to cover rent and buy medicine for her sick mother. Her life was a delicate balance between exhaustion and hope. Despite her tired eyes, Lena wore a gentle smile that made people feel at ease. She believed that kindness was free, even when life wasn't. Her XIO workers sometimes teased her for being too nice, but she never changed. She'd learned from her mother that compassion was a strength, not a weakness. As the clouds outside thickened, rain began to fall heavily, tapping against the diner's wide windows. Business slowed even more. Lena used the break to refill the sugar jars and check on the old radio that softly played an old tune from the corner. It was then that the bell above the door jingled, and a man stepped inside. He looked around nervously, as if unsure whether he belonged there. His coat was torn at the sleeves, soaked from the rain, and his shoes squished with every step. His hair was messy, and his hands trembled slightly. The other customers stared, whispering. A couple near the window wrinkled their noses. Another man buried his face back into his newspaper. Lena noticed how the stranger tried to stay invisible. He chose the farthest corner table, sitting with his head down. She could tell he hadn't eaten properly in days. There was something heavy in his eyes, loneliness, exhaustion, and maybe shame. Without hesitation, Lena approached him with her usual warmth. "Good afternoon, sir," she said softly. "Can I get you something warm to drink?" He hesitated, voice barely above a whisper. Just a glass of water, please." She smiled kindly. "How about some hot coffee instead? It's on the house today." The man looked up, surprised. I can't pay for that," he admitted, embarrassment coloring his face. "That's okay," Lena said, her tone firm but gentle. "You look like you could use something warm." She didn't wait for his permission, just walked to the counter, poured a fresh cup, and brought it to him along with a plate of soup and bread. When she placed it in front of him, his hands trembled as he held the cup. "You're very kind, miss," he murmured, eyes glistening. "People don't usually treat me like this." Lena shrugged lightly. "Everyone deserves kindness," she said, "especially on a day like this." From behind the counter, one of the other waiters, Tina, whispered loudly to another worker, "There she goes again, feeding strays like it's her job." They laughed quietly. Lena heard them, but ignored it. Her focus was on the old man slowly sipping the soup, his shoulders relaxing as warmth returned to his face. As she cleaned nearby tables, Lena overheard him muttering softly, as if talking to himself, "No one's looked at me like a human being in a long time." That sentence struck her deeply. How many people passed him on the streets without a glance? How many judged him by his torn clothes without knowing his story? When she returned to check on him, he asked, "Why are you helping me? You don't even know who I am." Lena smiled. "You don't have to be somebody for me to care. Everyone has bad days. Maybe one day I'll need help too. That's how life works." For a brief moment, the man's expression softened into something peaceful, like a storm that finally found calm. He nodded slowly, taking another sip. The rain outside continued to pour, but inside the diner, a quiet warmth spread through that small corner. Lena didn't realize that this simple act, offering a meal to a hungry stranger, was about to change her life forever. As she walked away to tend to another customer, the man glanced toward her again, studying her sincerity. There was something almost thoughtful in his gaze, something more than gratitude. He whispered under his breath, "Maybe goodness still exists after all." Lena didn't hear him, but somehow she felt it. She paused for a second, looked out the window, and smiled faintly. The world outside might be cold and grey, but inside her heart it still shone with quiet light. What Lena didn't know was that the man she had just fed was not who he appeared to be. Beneath the ragged clothes and unshaven face, a story far greater than she could imagine was waiting to unfold, a story that would test her faith in kindness and reveal the power of a single good deed. Diner buzzed with the clinking of cups, the murmur of tired conversations, and the constant hiss of the coffee machine. Rain still poured outside, tapping against the windows like a soft rhythm that echoed through the nearly empty room. Lena stood behind the counter, her apron damp at the edges, watching the old man eat slowly. His trembling hands gripped the spoon like it weighed a ton. Each bite he took seemed to bring him back to life a little. The other customers whispered among themselves, throwing glances filled with pity or judgment. A young couple laughed quietly, one of them saying, "People like that shouldn't even come in here." But Lena ignored the whispers. She remembered her mother's words, "You never know whose prayers might come back to bless you someday." Just as the old man finished his bowl of soup, the diner's back door swung open. Mr. Collins, the manager, walked out from his office, adjusting his tie and carrying his ever-present clipboard. He was a tall man with sharp eyes that seemed to measure everything in dollars and minutes. His gaze quickly locked on the old man sitting in the corner and then shifted to Lena. "Lena!" he called out, voice stern. "What's going on here? Did that man order something?" Lena hesitated, wiping her hands nervously on her apron. "Yes, sir, he was cold and hungry. I served him a bowl of soup and bread." Mr. Collins frowned deeply. "And who's paying for it?" There was silence. The old man lowered his head. Lena took a breath and said softly, "He couldn't pay. I'll cover it from my tips." The room went quiet except for the hum of the ceiling fan. Mr. Collins's face tightened. "Cover it from your tips?" he repeated, almost incredulous. "Do you think this is a charity? You're here to work, not to feed every vagrant that walks through that door." Lena's voice trembled, but she tried to stay calm. "Sir, it's just one bowl of soup. He looked so tired. I couldn't turn him away." The customers now watched the scene unfold with growing interest. Some smirked, some shook their heads. Mr. Collins crossed his arms. "That's not your decision to make. Every item counts. Every wasted plate comes out of my numbers. You think being kind is going to pay the rent here?" Lena bit her lip. Inside, she felt a sting of embarrassment, but there was also a fire she couldn't suppress. "Maybe kindness doesn't pay rent," she said quietly, "but it feeds the soul. Sometimes people just need a little care." Mr. Collins raised his voice. "Enough with your speeches, Lena. You're lucky I don't deduct this from your paycheck. If you can't follow the rules, maybe this isn't the place for you." The old man looked up, his eyes wet, voice raspy. "Please, don't be hard on her. She only showed me mercy when no one else would." But Mr. Collins barely looked at him. "Sir, finish your meal and leave. Next time, come with money." The old man nodded sadly and reached for his hat, hands shaking. Lena rushed forward and gently touched his arm. "Don't worry, sir," she whispered. "Eat slowly. You're welcome here any time." The old man smiled faintly, a hint of gratitude shining through his tired expression. "Bless you, child. People like you make this world worth living in." When he finally left, the rain had stopped. A faint ray of sunlight peeked through the clouds, reflecting off the wet pavement. Lena stood by the door, watching him disappear down the street. Mr. Collins shook his head from behind the counter. "You'll never get anywhere in life being soft like that," he muttered. "People will walk all over you." Lena turned to him and replied, steady and calm, "Maybe, but I'd rather be walked over for being kind than step on someone just to get ahead." For a brief moment, the diner fell silent again. Even the whispering customers seemed to reflect on her words. Mr. Collins said nothing more, just went back to his office, slamming the door shut behind him. Lena returned to her work, her heart heavy but peaceful. She wiped the table where the old man had sat and noticed he'd left something. A small napkin folded neatly, with shaky handwriting that read, "Thank you for your kindness. One day you'll see what it truly means." She smiled softly, unaware that this small act of compassion, scolded and mocked by everyone around her, would soon change her entire life. The following morning began like any other for Lena. The sun peeked weakly through the grey clouds, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the small diner. She tied her faded apron around her waist, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Her feet ached, and her eyes were heavy from another sleepless night spent caring for her sick mother. Still she smiled, because that's what she did every day, no matter how heavy her world felt. The diner was slowly filling with its usual morning crowd. Construction workers grabbing breakfast, office employees rushing for coffee, and the few regulars who came just to see Lena's gentle smile. But there was something different in the air today, something quiet and expectant. Outside, the rumble of engines broke the morning routine. Through the large diner windows, Lena saw 3 black luxury cars pull up one by one. The vehicles gleamed under the weak sunlight, their polished surfaces reflecting the street like mirrors. Conversations paused. Forks stopped mid-air. Everyone turned their heads. From the first car, two tall men in suits stepped out, scanning the area like bodyguards. Then the rear door opened, and out came a figure no one expected to see again. The old man, but he wasn't the same anymore. Gone were the torn coat and weathered hat. Now he stood in a perfectly tailored navy blue suit, a gold watch glinting on his wrist, his posture straight and confident. His face was freshly shaven, his hair combed neatly back. He looked powerful, respected, someone who clearly didn't belong in a small roadside diner. A hush fell over the room as he entered. The manager's eyes went wide. Even the cook peeked from the kitchen window in disbelief. The old man, or rather the gentleman, smiled warmly as his gaze found Lena behind the counter. "Good morning, Miss Lena," he said, his voice steady but kind. Lena blinked, unsure if she was dreaming. "Sir? You're the man from yesterday," she stammered, confusion flooding her face. "Yes," he nodded, stepping closer. "The same man, though yesterday I wasn't quite myself." The manager quickly rushed over, bowing awkwardly. "Welcome, sir. We're honored to have you. Please have a seat. Anything you like on the house." The man turned to him calmly. "Oh, you remember me now? That's kind of you." His tone was polite but carried a weight that made the manager swallow hard. Turning back to Lena, the man continued, "Yesterday, when I came here, no one would look at me. No one offered me water or kindness, except you. You didn't ask who I was or what I could pay. You simply cared." Lena's heart thudded in her chest. She could still hear the laughter of the other customers from yesterday, still feel the sting of her manager's angry words. "I only did what anyone should do," she whispered, her eyes glistening. The man smiled softly. "Sadly, my dear, not everyone does what they should." He raised a hand, signaling one of his bodyguards, who brought forward a leather folder. "Allow me to introduce myself properly. My name is Mr. Harrison, owner of Harrison Grand Hotels. I was traveling nearby and decided to see for myself how people treat strangers when they believe there's nothing to gain." The room went completely silent. A spoon dropped and clattered to the floor. Everyone was frozen, their faces pale with shock. Lena's lips parted slightly. You were testing people?" "Yes," Mr. Harrison nodded, "but I wasn't testing you. I was hoping to find someone genuine, and yesterday I did." The manager began to apologize frantically. "Sir, I didn't know." Mr. Harrison raised his hand gently. "You don't need to explain. You only showed me what money can't buy, true kindness." He looked at Lena again, his voice filled with admiration. "You gave food to a hungry man, comfort to a lonely soul, and dignity to someone everyone else dismissed. That's something rare." Tears welled up in Lena's eyes. She couldn't speak. Her throat tightened as emotion washed over her. She wasn't used to being praised, especially not by someone like this. Mr. Harrison gave her a kind smile. "I would like to meet you later today, Lena. I have something important to discuss, something that concerns your future." Her hands trembled slightly as she nodded. "Of course, sir. Thank you." As he left the diner, his bodyguards opened the car doors. The other customers watched in awe, whispering among themselves. The same people who had mocked Lena yesterday now stared at her with wide eyes and regretful faces. Once the cars drove away, the diner erupted in murmurs. The manager, red-faced and uneasy, muttered, "Lena, I think your life's about to change." She smiled faintly, wiping a tear. "I didn't do it for change," she said softly. "I did it because he was hungry." And with that simple truth, the morning light seemed brighter, because kindness once again had found its voice. The diner fell into stunned silence. The same man, whom everyone had mocked the day before, the one they thought was a beggar, now stood before them in a tailored suit, polished shoes glinting under the afternoon light. His kind but piercing eyes searched the room until they landed on Lena. She stood frozen near the counter, her apron still stained with coffee and crumbs, her heart racing in disbelief. "Miss Lena," the man said with a warm smile, stepping closer. "Do you remember me?" Her lips trembled. "You're the old man from yesterday. I'm sorry if I did something wrong." He chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Quite the opposite. Yesterday I came here looking for something more valuable than food. I was searching for kindness. The crowd gasped. Cameras from the man's team started recording, and whispers rippled through the diner. Even the manager, who had scolded Lena harshly the previous day, looked pale and uncomfortable. Mr. Harrison continued, his voice gentle yet commanding. I disguised myself as a poor, hungry man to see how people would treat someone who seemed worthless. I went to 4 restaurants before this one. In each place I was ignored, mocked, or thrown out. He paused, glancing at the staff who had turned away from him before. But then I met you, Lena. Lena's eyes welled with tears. She looked down, unable to meet his gaze. You didn't know who I was, you didn't ask for anything, he said softly. You gave me food, warmth, and dignity. You reminded me that humanity still exists in this world. He turned to the manager, who was now nervously wiping sweat from his forehead. And yet, Mr. Harrison said, you punished her for doing the right thing. The manager stammered, I didn't know, sir. I was only following rules. Rules? Harrison interrupted calmly. Rules without compassion are just walls around the heart. Lena wanted to speak, but her voice broke. Sir, I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I just thought you looked hungry. That, Harrison replied, his tone firm yet kind, is exactly why you deserve something special. He turned to his assistant, who handed him a large white envelope. Harrison walked up to Lena and placed it in her trembling hands. Inside were documents, medical sponsorship forms, job papers, and a check. This will cover your mother's full medical treatment, he said, and when she recovers, I'd like you to come work with me at my hotel, not as a waitress, but as a manager in training. You have the heart every company needs. Lena gasped, covering her mouth as tears streamed down her cheeks. The entire diner erupted in murmurs of disbelief. Some employees who had mocked her earlier now wiped their own tears, ashamed of their cruelty. Sir, I don't know what to say, Lena whispered. I just did what anyone should do. He smiled. Unfortunately, not everyone does, my dear. The world needs more people like you. Then he looked around at everyone. Let this be a reminder to all of us. Kindness doesn't need witnesses or wealth. True kindness happens when no one is watching. At that moment, the atmosphere in the diner transformed. The same place that had echoed with judgment and greed now felt filled with humility and warmth. Some customers even stood up to applaud. Lena hugged the envelope close to her chest. She thought of her mother, lying in bed at home, unaware of the miracle that had just happened. Her tears fell freely now, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming grace of what kindness had brought her way. Mr. Harrison placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Remember, Lena, he said quietly, kindness is an investment that always pays back, sometimes in ways we can't imagine. Before leaving, he looked at the crowd one last time. The next time someone walks through those doors needing help, think twice before you turn away. The person you ignore might be the one who came to test your heart. With that, he walked out, his team following behind him. The expensive cars outside slowly pulled away, leaving behind an awestruck silence. Lena stood still, wiping her eyes. Her co-workers approached her, one by one, to apologize, some offering hugs, others too ashamed to speak. The manager placed a trembling hand on her shoulder. Lena, I was wrong, he said. You've taught me something I'll never forget. She smiled faintly, her eyes still glistening. We all make mistakes, she said softly. What matters is what we learn from them. As the door swung shut and the bell chimed one last time, the voiceover for the video fades in. Kindness costs nothing, but its value is beyond measure. You never know who you're helping, or how that simple act may change your life forever. And with that, the camera closes on Lena's tearful smile, the smile of someone whose heart had changed the world with a single act of compassion.